Former President Bush 43 told you when Trump entered the race, he thought
interesting, won't last.
Won't last.
Won't last. But when Trump started to rise, I think he became concerned because he saw this populism of Donald Trump getting in the way of America's position in the world.
He gave you rare insight, though, into his criticism of Donald Trump. What did he tell you?
One of the things he said was that one of the hallmarks of great leadership is humility. So when Donald Trump said, "I am my own advisor," Bush thought, and this is a quote, "Wow, this guy doesn't know what it means to be president."
What was his tone when he talked to you about Trump?
I think it was restrained. The Bushes are very restrained. And I also think that they realize they have a role to play as former presidents. And they have to be restrained. They have to be dignified.
He weighed his words.
I think he did, yes.
President Bush 41 was a bit blunter. He said that he thought Donald Trump had, quote, a certain ego, and then he told you point blank,
he's a blowhard. Oh. He's a blowhard. And I don't like him, plain and simple. And I'm not excited about him being a leader, was his quote. And if you look at the Bush family, it makes perfect sense. Donald Trump is everything that the Bush family is not. George Bush grew up thinking about the greater good. Donald Trump, I think, is manifestly narcissistic. It's part of his brand. And that brand is the antithesis of the Bush brand.
How do you think these two men feel that Donald Trump is now the standard bearer of the Republican Party?
I think it's pretty clear if you look at their records and their views politically that, I'm going to quote George H.W. Bush, they're not excited about Donald Trump being our leader. That's not a leap of faith. That's pretty clear. And I think the most clear demonstration we get of that recently is Charlottesville. The Bushes came out with a joint tweet, which they had never done in the past, condemning bigotry and anti-Semitism and all the things that were on display in Charlottesville among the white supremacists. That was a clear betrayal of American values, and the Bushes came out with that joint statement. I think that spoke resoundingly about the void in leadership that they were seeing from the White House.
There are a lot of quotes from the Bushes that are going to make news in this book. Bush 43 talks about whether Vice President Dick Cheney had played an outsized role in his presidency, something that gets talked about all the time. Was Dick Cheney too powerful? And Bush 43 told you?
Well, he was talking about the neoconservatives in general, and specifically about Cheney and Rumsfeld. And he said, and I quote, Cheney and Rumsfeld never made one decision.
That's the quote.
That's the quote. I understand his frustration because at the time there was the perception that Dick Cheney was the acting president. But in fact, George W. Bush had a lifetime of making bold decisions. He has this preternatural confidence in himself as a leader. And if you talk to those around him, they have confidence in his leadership. And so this notion that Cheney was making the decisions is ludicrous.
When you started to write this book, let me guess, the title was not The Last Republicans.
When I set out to write this in 2013, it was a very different time. But The Last Republicans became the right title during what has become the Trump era.
Because?
Well, George W. Bush himself said in 2016 privately, and to me, I fear that I'll be the last Republican president.
He confirmed that to you.
He confirmed that to me. And it wasn't just about Hillary Clinton becoming president. It was because Donald Trump represented everything that the Bushes abhorred.